Astra, Part 1, by Sven Bertelsen. The two severed heads next to the door to the stars looked remarkably peaceful. I'd swear that one was even smiling. Wondered what pieces of forbidden technology they had been trying to carry through. That was one of the few restrictions on people wanting to leave this overcrowded and chaotic world for a new life in one of the many planets the door could take you to. I nervously started checking through my pockets and pack, just in case. I looked at the queue in front of me. It would be my turn soon to be checked by the customs guard. Being so close to the door, they too were not allowed any modern technology, and their curved scimitars hung menacingly from their belts. The cut-off day for allowable technology was 1325, 1 year before the first recorded description of a gun. Even carrying instructions for making a later invention was forbidden, though I'm sure that many people had memorized details for what they thought were the most important ones for them. Behind me in the line I'd seen a family dragging a small cart with millstones and sacks of seed corn, and even a great strong man with a blacksmith anvil on his back. They were hoping that their services would be in demand wherever they were going. I hoped to eke a living as a minstrel, using my wits, voice, and the ud, an early form of lute that I was carrying. The queue moved forward. I could see the next person presenting themselves for the customs guards. Even they seemed to be taken aback by the striking woman who stood before them, together with a full-grown male lion. Even without a lion, in her rich blue silk gown and huge red hat and bare feet, she seemed out of place amongst the rest of the people in their rough, hard-wearing, homespun clothes and tough boots. The guards seemed nervous about approaching her. As if to show her mastery of the beast, she reached down and held the lion's jaws open. I wondered which planet she'd chosen as destination. I imagined she might make a very interesting travelling companion. She certainly could inspire some interesting ballads, at least. Her inspection completed, the guards opened the door to another world. It was night there, and I glimpsed a myriad of stars and a crescent moon hanging over rolling hills. I did hope this was Nova Albion, where I was destined. The lady and her lion stepped through the door, and I could see them vanish into the night on a new world. My turn next. I could see the guards already casting suspicious glances at my ud. I held up the certificate of acceptability I'd paid for when I bought the ud. Though the ud looked like a 15th century lute, it did have fewer strings and had been invented before the cut-off date. I did, however, have some spare strings, a drill and some tuning pegs, and would be able to add the extra strings after I went through the door. That would make it a lot easier to play. "Humph," grunting one of the guards. "Yet another ud and a fool who thinks he can sing his way through life." I expressed my surprise that anyone else had come through with the same idea. The guards laughed. It seems I was the third one this week. "Were any going to Nova Albion?" I inquired. "Dunno, don't care," was all the response I got. "Packs and any weapons onto the conveyor. Empty your pockets into the tray and walk through the metal detector," growled the other guard. I beeped. I always beep. This time I knew why, though. All my buttons might look like plain cloth-covered ones, but under each cover was a gold coin. If I did get robbed on the other side of the door, I might at least be able to keep my clothes. After inspecting a couple of buttons, the guards were satisfied, only keeping 2 of them as presents. I was on my way. Next stop, Nova Albion. Ad Astra, Part 2, by Sven Bertelsen. I looked through the open door into the night beyond. This was a one-way ticket. There was no return. If I stepped through, I could never return to Earth. Was I sure? I turned and looked back at the overcrowded, polluted option behind me. I was sure. I stumbled as I stepped through the door. Nothing can really prepare you for a sudden change in gravity. I took a deep breath of the cool, clean air and turned back to look. Nothing. No sign of a door, just a worn area on the ground that just stopped where the door should have been. In front of me, a faint trail through the thick, moonlit grass. I had been told they moved the door every day or two. That way it gave new arrivals a chance to avoid any ne'er-do-wells who might be laying in wait for them. I may as well follow the trail ahead of me. The only map that was provided to emigrants only showed major features and a cross where the door was, or should that be, had been. Just to be sure, I pulled a compass from my pocket. The trail headed northwest. All the planets that had been chosen for settlement had a magnetic field. Without one, the radiation levels from space were too high. The map showed that in the general direction of the trail, the land fell away to a river valley that led to the nearest sea. That seemed to be a good choice. It must have been a few hours later when the sun rose. In the west. That was going to be confusing, and meant that the sundial watch I'd packed would be going backwards when I eventually stopped for long enough to work out my latitude. That, of course, assumed that this world's magnetic field was locked to its rotational axis. That was a problem for later. Now I was beginning to feel hungry, and I may as well have breakfast, even though my stomach told me it was supper time. I looked around and spotted a small wooded copse to the east of the trail. I could make a fire and cook some porridge. As I neared the copse, I caught a faint scent of wood smoke. Perhaps someone else was cooking breakfast. Not wanting to startle anyone, I called out, "Hello, the camp!" I got a reply, but not one I was expecting. A lion's roar chilled my blood, and I froze mid-step. The roar was followed by a sweet voice. "Stand still, and you will be safe." And the lady I had seen passing through the door and her lion emerged from between the trees. I assured the lady that moving was the last thing on my mind, which was a lie. My legs and the rest of me wanted to run. Feeling the hot breath of a lion on your hand and smelling the carnivore's mouth odour set my knees shaking. "Stand still, I told you," she said, as she looked me up and down. "He looks harmless enough. Sit." I made to sit down, and she laughed. "Not you, silly. Hadari, the lion." She pointed at me. "You can join us for breakfast, rather than being Hadari's breakfast." The three of us sat round the small fire, Hadari gnawing on the leg of something that looked like a deer, while 2 venison steaks broiled on a gridiron. It smelled better than my porridge would have. As the meat cooked, we talked. Well, Hadari didn't. His mouth was full. The first problem was introducing myself. It seemed silly to use my name from Earth. This was a new life, and it deserved a new name, but I had not thought of one yet. "I am called—" I paused. "Blondel, the troubadour." Hardly original, but it was a good name. A smile crossed her face, and she replied, "I am the Lady Imara, soothsayer, diviner of the future, and oracle. You've chosen an apt name, and I sense that you will bear it honourably." Between bites of the tender venison we discussed our hopes and plans for this new life. Never did we mention our former lives. That seemed inappropriate. I expressed my hope that we could travel together, at least for a while. Imara thought for a while and finally asked Hadari for his opinion. I have to assume a lion's purr marked agreement, as she smiled again and said, "It will be."